Hey, welcome back to Nocturne Library. Or welcome in if you're new here. I'm Ava Calloway, and I'm really glad you're here tonight. Thank you for making this little corner of the internet part of your nightly wind down. It means a lot to know this is where you come to rest. Tonight's story was written by Nora Fielding, and it's a very soft place to land. If your mind's been busy today, or the day itself felt a little too full, you're in the right place. This one carries you to a luxury treehouse suite in Ubud, Bali, tucked up in the jungle, while warm rain moves through the leaves around you. It's all timber and dim light and open air. Fresh fruit, slow breeze, rain on the canopy, and that sheltered feeling of being held somewhere quiet above the dark. There's nowhere to get to in this story, nothing to keep track of. You can simply settle in and let the atmosphere do the work. And if you'd ever like the video or subscribe, it does help me keep making these stories for you. All right, let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, and take one easy breath in and out. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. High above the rain. Cool white percale rests against your shoulder and along the back of your knees, carrying a trace of night coolness that the warm air has not yet taken from it. Above you, the high along roof lifts into shadow, and the ceiling fan turns beneath it with the same measured pace it has kept all evening, the woven rattan blades stirring the humid dark and giving one rounded click each time they complete their circle. You are already settled here, already high above the rain-soaked jungle. In time, your attention may drift outward to the bamboo screens at the pavilion's edge, or down to the low lacquer tray beside the bed, where chilled fruit waits in the dark, or farther still to the stream in the ravine below, smoothed by height and leaves into a single liquid thread. But for now, you do not need to go anywhere at all. The night has placed you here beneath the thatch, on this broad bed with the mosquito net tied back at the four posts. The mattress receives your weight without any need to adjust itself. It is wide enough that you feel no edge of it, only the level, cushioned support beneath your back, your hips, your calves, your heels. The linen is crisp where it lies flat, and faintly rumpled where your body has shaped it. When you breathe in, your ribs lift against the sheet that lies over you. When you breathe out, the cloth settles again with a dry, almost papery hush. It is a small luxury. Clean cotton, cool at first touch, then warming against your skin. The air moves across your forearms and the tops of your feet in a thin, passing current from the fan. Not cold, not still. Just enough motion to keep the humidity from gathering too heavily on the skin. The fan slows the room. The sound is not sharp. It arrives with the same shape each time, a familiar point in the rotation, and then is gone before it can ask to be noticed for long. Beyond the bed, the pavilion opens into darkness through its screened sides. The bamboo lattice and fine mesh are there more as a boundary of texture than as a barrier. Through them comes the rain's many-voiced pattern, water slipping from leaf to leaf, a finer patter on lighter growth, a broad, wetter sound where larger leaves catch and release it. And underneath all of that, the distant run of the Ravine stream. From up here, the stream does not sound urgent. It has lost its separate ripples and little eddies. It is only a continuous undertone, low and fluid. You can feel, too, that particular steadiness of a timber sleeping pavilion built above the ground and long accustomed to weather. The dark teak floorboards beyond the bed still carry some warmth from the day, though the air above them has cooled. You can feel that the pavilion is raised among trees rather than rooted in stone. The mosquito net hangs tied back at each post, gathered in loose vertical folds. In the low light, it looks nearly weightless, though you know from touch how the gauze catches for an instant against the skin before sliding free. Tonight, it stays open, drawn away from the bed, the folds resting where they have been fastened, the fabric barely stirring when the fan's current reaches it. Your eyes do not need to make out every line of the room to know where things are. You know the rise of the roof overhead. You know the bedside table near your hand. You know the lacquer tray set low beside the bed, where slices of mango and papaya and snake fruit have been left chilled against the warm night, even without reaching for them. You can imagine the difference in their textures. Mango soft, papaya denser, snake fruit firmer. They are simply there, part of the room's quiet provision, as ordinary and pleasing as the clean sheet beneath you. The rain continues without effort. It does not rush. It gathers itself in layers among the leaves outside the screens. And because you are above the ground and partly open to the air, you hear those layers separately at first. A broad leaf receives more than it can keep. A cluster of finer leaves answers with a quicker pattern. Somewhere farther off, palms release their water in longer strands. Then all of it blends again into one even field of sound, spread wide around the pavilion. The smell of the room shifts in small degrees as the fan turns. There is the dry scent of laundered cotton close to your face. And beneath that, the warmer note of teak that has spent the day storing heat in its grain. The thatch above has its own faint, sun-cured fragrance, now dampened by night air, but not erased. Every so often, a wetter breath comes through the screens, carrying green leaf, rainwater, and the dark mineral smell that rises from the ravine after evening rain. None of it enters too strongly. It passes through in threads, mingling and loosening again. If you move one hand across the sheet, your palm can feel the weave. Percale has that plain, fine firmness to it. Smooth, but not slippery. Cool in one place, and warmer in another, where your body has lingered. Your fingers travel from the flatness near your hip to a crease gathered at your waist. and the fabric changes from taut to folded, from crisp to softened by use. Even that tiny difference is enough to occupy the mind for a moment. Above, the fan completes another turn. Rounded click. The sound marks the same point each time. You could count by it if you wished, but there is no need. It is enough that the click returns, and returns again, while the blades continue their slow work in the dimness under the roof. The high thatch overhead absorbs more sound than it gives back. Nothing echoes. The room receives each noise and rounds it. From where you lie, the open-sided shape of the pavilion is felt more than seen. The roof rises steeply enough that the dark above you has depth. The posts at the bed's corners stand solid and still. Beyond them, the screened perimeter traces a lighter geometry against the jungle night. It is an old and sensible kind of openness. Air moving through, rain kept out, timber carrying the roof high enough that warmth can lift and disperse. Even in darkness, you can sense the proportions of it, the way the space lets air move through it. Somewhere below the level of the bed, a board releases a trace of the day's stored warmth into the cooler air. You do not feel it directly so much as register the contrast. Cool sheet, humid air, warmer wood beneath all of it. The layers of temperature fit together with surprising precision. Nothing is extreme. The comfort lies in their difference. You notice your jaw unclenching a little. Then the weight of your head seems to spread more evenly into the pillow. The pillowcase is the same white percale as the sheet, carrying that fresh, ironed smoothness at the edges, and a gentler softness at the center where your cheek has been. Your neck finds its place without correction. One ankle eases away from the other. These are such small changes that they barely deserve the name of movement, but the bed answers them all the same, receiving each fraction of weight more completely. The stream below remains a constant under the rain. If you follow it with your listening, it leads down through foliage and darkness without requiring any image of the ravine itself. You do not have to picture stones or banks or water shining. Up here, it is enough to hear the stream as a lower band of sound from farther down the ravine. It gives the night depth. It lets you feel how high the pavilion is, not in a dramatic way, only as a calm fact. You are above it, with all that water moving somewhere below the floorboards and under the trees. The fruit beside the bed keeps its own cool in silence. The lacquer tray catches almost no light. It is simply a darker shape among dark shapes, with the faint possibility of sweetness nearby. You may taste it later, or not. For now, its presence is enough. The room contains what it needs: air, shelter, a broad bed, the fan. Then, from beyond the screens, one heavier drop finally gathers itself from the edge of a broad banana leaf and falls. You hear it land on the wooden edge of the veranda with a rounded, muted tap. After that first distinct knock, the rain resumes its larger pattern as though nothing had interrupted it. Yet the sound remains with you, not as a disturbance, but as a new part of the night's measure. Then the stream below, the fan above, the linen under your hand, the air crossing your skin feels a touch cooler now that you have been still long enough to notice it fully. Not cooler in the room itself, but cooler by contrast with the warmth your body has made beneath the sheet. Your breathing has lengthened without your deciding it should. Inhale, and the humid air enters with that faint green freshness carried through the screens. Exhale, and the pillow receives a little more of your weight. The pavilion remains open to the jungle and separate from it at once. Rain travels through leaves outside. The thatched roof holds its high shadow. The posts stand firm. The net hangs back from the mattress in pale folds. The teak beneath everything keeps its stored warmth. Each part does exactly what it is made to do. And because of that, your attention can loosen. You do not need to arrange the night. You only lie within it, high under the along-along roof, while the fan turns and clicks, while the stream continues far below, while the first banana leaf drop has marked the veranda and left the wood dark again, the sheet cool against your shoulder, the air moving over your arms, the wide mattress steady beneath you. These are enough to follow, and so you remain there, above the rain, with the room gradually becoming simpler around you. White linen, dark timber, turning blades, and the deep, even sound of water traveling through the Ubud night. Chapter 2. The Screens and the Palms. Out at the screen, one wet palm tip touches the mesh and slides away. The sound is so slight that it almost disappears into the rest of the night. But not quite. It gives the edge of the room a shape. And so you remain there, above the rain, with the room gradually becoming simpler around you. White linen, dark timber, turning blades, and the deep, even sound of water traveling through the Ubud night. After a little while, your attention drifts outward again. Not far, only to the edges of the pavilion, where the night meets its woven boundaries. From the bed, you can sense the bamboo lattice in its familiar pattern, the fine mesh stretched within it. The rain does not strike one surface alone. It moves through layers. First, the broad leaves beyond, then the thinner leaves nearer in, then the screens, then the veranda timber, then the dark drop below, where the ravine gathers all of it and carries it on. The fan turns overhead with its same measured rhythm, the woven rattan blades pushing a mild current down through the warm, damp air. At one point in each circle comes that rounded click, never sharp, never urgent, only a mark in the turning. Between those marks, the rain arranges itself into finer textures. You begin to hear the difference between water landing on banana leaves and water threading through palm fronds. The banana leaves take the rain in broad, padded catches. The palms answer in slimmer runs. A brushing, a sifted spill, a lighter contact before the drops move on. Beyond the bed, beyond the teak floorboards still faintly warm from the day, the pavilion continues into rain breath air and lattice and leaf. You do not need to look to know where each boundary lies. The body learns a room quickly when it is lying still inside it. The width of the mattress, the open dark above, the posts where the mosquito net is tied back, the distance to the screens, the depth beyond them where the foliage drops toward the stream. All of it settles into you until the space can be felt with your skin, almost as clearly as with your eyes. Another turn of the fan, another rounded click. Then, from somewhere just beyond the veranda, comes the muted knock of a heavier drop, slipping from a broad banana leaf onto the wooden edge. It lands with a low, hollow note, more felt than heard, and then the rain resumes its many smaller contacts around it. The sound does not interrupt anything. It simply joins the pattern, one recurring point among many. The way the fan's click joins the turning above. Air passes through, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant earth. But the rain itself remains outside, translated into touch and sound before it reaches you. Here and there, a finer spray cools the outer screens and darkens the bamboo. The room receives that change without taking in the weather. You remain dry on the white percale, one shoulder cooled by the sheet, one arm warmed by the night air. The stream below has been present all along, though at first it was easy to hear it as part of the rain. Now it separates a little. Far beneath the pavilion, softened by foliage and height, it runs through the ravine in one continuous undertone. Not a rush, not a bright chatter, more like a long thread of liquid sound drawn steadily through the dark. The rain gathers above it and around it, but the stream keeps its own level course below, and once you find it, you can return to it whenever you like. You listen down to it for a few breaths. The teak beneath the bed and under the open part of the pavilion keeps its own register in the weather. Rain does not hammer here. It arrives by transfer. A drop gathers at the lip of a leaf, grows heavy enough to release, then falls to the wooden edge of the veranda with that familiar, contained knock. Elsewhere, water traces along the outer surfaces and disappears into the dark. The timber receives the night in increments. Dampness darkens what is exposed. The boards under shelter keep the day's stored warmth a little longer. Even from bed, you can almost map those temperatures. Cooler at the threshold, warmer nearer the mattress. Coolest where air keeps moving through the screens. The fan turns. Click. Your breathing finds that pace without effort. Not matched exactly, but near enough that the room begins to feel less like a place arranged around you, and more like a set of repeating motions you are already part of. Breath in, fan turning. Breath out, rain moving through leaves. A drop gathers, a drop falls. The stream continues below all of it. At the perimeter, the bamboo lattice gives the dark a structure. Through day, it would cast a pattern. At night, with the rain beyond it, it is more a sensed geometry than a visible one. Verticals, crossings, the steadiness of crafted lines against the looser movement of leaf and water. You can imagine the bamboo darkened by damp, each strip cool where the air reaches it. The mesh within it is nearly invisible until something touches it, and then it briefly exists as sound. Palm tip, rain spray, the faintest tapping of water shaken free from one leaf to another. A few low insects pulse somewhere beyond the screens, so subdued they seem woven into the stream's undertone. Their rhythm comes and goes under the rain, not enough to pull your attention, only enough to add another texture to the dark. The whole outside world is made legible by sound. You hear distance in the softness of the stream, nearness in the brush of a palm tip, height in the delayed way water seems to travel downward after striking the upper leaves first. Again, that muted knock from the banana leaf to the veranda edge. You begin to recognize the interval of it, though not as something to count. Water gathers on the broad leaf for a while before its weight changes. Then release. Then wood. Then the leaf starts over. There is comfort in that repetition, in how the same sound returns, altered only by the fullness of the drop, the exact place it lands, the amount of rain the leaf has carried since the last fall. The air passing through the screens reaches your face and forearms with a damp coolness that never quite becomes cold. It carries the green smell of wet palms and the darker scent of soaked bark somewhere below. Under that, almost too faint to separate, is the mineral trace rising from the ravine where the stream moves between stone and root. You breathe all of it in through the open room. Somewhere near the outer edge, a cluster of drops loosens at once from the leaves and passes through the palms in a quick descending series. Broad contact, then finer contact, then a few stray taps on timber. The sound narrows as it falls away. You can follow it downward without seeing a thing. That is one of the pleasures of lying here in the dark. Vision no longer has to do all the work. Your ears measure distance. Your skin measures air. The mattress measures your weight and gives it back as support. The mesh receives another brief touch, this time lighter, as if only the end of a frond has found it. Then nothing there but rain again. You rest inside this porous boundary, aware of how little separates you from the jungle, and how sufficient that little is. Bamboo, mesh, roof, bed, air passing through. The arrangement is simple and exact. It lets the night remain itself while keeping you at ease within it. You can hear the leaves loading with water. You can hear the stream carrying what reaches the ravine. You can hear the fan making its calm circuit under the thatch. None of these sounds asks for response. They continue whether you attend to them or not. And because of that, your listening can grow looser. The more you listen, the less the rain is one thing. There is rain held in the high leaves, rain running off palm ribs, rain caught and released by the banana leaves, rain reduced to coolness on the screens, rain translated into darker timber, rain carried away below by the stream. The night does not flatten into a single hush. It remains layered, but the layers fit together so well that your mind no longer needs to sort them. You notice one, then another, then let them merge again. Then your attention rises again to the screens, where the nearest leaves make themselves known by contact rather than by sight. A palm frond has leaned closer in the rain. At first, you hear only a nearness in it, a slight thickening at the edge of the room, as if the dark there has grown greener and more textured. The fan turns overhead. Click. A drop falls to the veranda edge. Knock. Below, the stream keeps moving through the ravine, then the frond finds the mesh. Its wet tips comb once along the screen and pause there, pressed by the weight of water and the mild shift of air. The contact is delicate but distinct, a faint rasp of leaf against mesh. For a breath or two it stays, close enough that the outside feels gathered just beyond the bed. Not entering, only resting there. After a moment, the weight changes. The rain shifts on its surface, and the frond eases away again. That small movement changes the sound at the edge of the room. Where the mesh had been brushed, it is clear again. Where the frond had rested, rain resumes its finer pattern. You notice these changes, the way you notice the movement of fabric against skin when you settle deeper into bed. Not as events, exactly, but as alterations in pressure, in contact, in the arrangement of what surrounds you. And then, just once more, the very end of a palm tip touches the mesh, lightly, almost tenderly, before sliding back into the rain. Chapter 3. Cool linen, warm air. You stay where you are, and your attention comes closer. The rain is still at the edges of the pavilion, moving through leaves and over the veranda and down into the dark of the ravine. But you do not need to follow it very far now. What matters first is the place where your shoulder meets the sheet. The percale is cool there, smooth and dry, with that clean, faintly crisp touch that gives way only a little under the weight of you. It is still cool from the evening. Against the warmth of your skin, it feels freshly turned back, dry and ordered and calm. Your cheek rests near the pillow's cooler side. One forearm lies uncovered, and the air moving across it is warm but not heavy, touched with rain breath and the mild circulation from the fan overhead. It settles along your skin in a thin layer, humid enough to soften every edge, light enough that you can still feel the difference when the fan completes another slow turn and sends a broader drift downward. Above you, under the high thatch, the rattan blades keep circling. Each rotation has its own shape. First, the low, even stir of moved air. Then, the faintest change in pressure across your face and throat. Then, at one familiar point, that rounded click. Never sharp, never irregular, simply part of the turning. After a while, the click becomes part of the room's pattern. The bed receives you more fully than it did at first. Not by much. Just enough that the mattress settles under you as the minutes pass. The linen at your hip draws flatter. The pillow beneath your head settles by a fraction. Your heel, where it brushes the sheet, finds a cooler patch and then leaves it warm. You make one small adjustment, hardly more than the length of a breath. Your weight shifts a little deeper into one side of the bed, and the mattress gives a soft, answering hush beneath the percale. A sound like fabric easing over itself. Then, stillness returns in a new arrangement, one that fits better than the last. The bed feels less like a surface now, and more like support. The difference is subtle, but you notice it. At first, you are resting on it, aware of the broadness of the mattress, the openness of the pavilion, the rain beyond the screens. Now your body begins to trust what is under it. The muscles that had kept a trace of attention in the shoulders and along the ribs do not need that work. Your shoulder blade settles. The back of one knee loosens into the sheet. Even your jaw finds a less effortful place. The mosquito net remains tied back at the four posts. In the low light, they are almost more shape than fabric, faint and airy at the edges of the bed. Because they are drawn back, the room stays open around you. Nothing encloses you. And yet, those loose lengths of gauze still mark the bed as its own small place within the larger room. A lighter square inside timber and rain and dark. You can sense the height of the pavilion without looking. The along roof rises far above, its thatch keeping the rain at a distance, even when the sound thickens. The dark teak floorboards below the bed still hold some of the day's warmth, though the air above them has cooled. Now and then, the wood settles. Then, the fan keeps turning, and the rain continues in its layered way, and the room remains exactly as it was. The smooth sheet under your shoulder, the slightly denser weight of the mattress under your hips, the looser, warmer air along your forearm, the edge of the pillow near your mouth, carrying the clean scent of washed cotton, the place where one ankle rests against the other, skin warm on skin. As you notice each one, it becomes simpler. You do not need to improve any of it. You only feel where you are already supported. Another turn of the fan, another rounded click. It begins to seem possible that the fan is not above you so much as within the same rhythm as your breathing. Not matched exactly, not in any counted way, but near enough that your chest rises during one part of the rotation and eases down during another. You could follow the click if you wanted. You could follow the rain as it moves from broad leaves to screen and wood and the dark below. But your attention keeps returning to the plain fact of cloth against skin, air against skin, and the broad steadiness underneath. In this warm Ubud night, edges soften. Your skin does not end abruptly. It receives the air. The air receives the fan's circulation. The bed receives the shape of you. The pavilion receives the weather. Somewhere beyond the tied-back net, rainwater finds one broad banana leaf, gathers, and then lets go. The drop lands on the wooden edge of the veranda with that muted knock you have already come to know. Not loud enough to interrupt, distinct enough to mark a moment. Then the leaves take over again, and the stream below continues its low, liquid undertone far beneath the floorboards. You do not need to listen outward for long. The room has already taught you its pattern. Because of that, you can let the larger sounds continue without attending to each one. They become background in the best sense. Not distant, not absent, but carrying on without requiring you. Your body begins to answer with its own economies. The hand nearest the pillow uncurls by a little. Your tongue rests more heavily in your mouth. The space across your chest feels broader on the exhale. One foot drifts outward until the weight of the blanketless sheet lies across the top of it in a cool fold. Such small changes would be easy to miss in a busier place. Here, they are enough to notice. The teak beneath the bed has its own stored warmth, and though you are not touching the floorboards, you can feel their presence in the room. Timber changes the air around it. It keeps a dry, grounded note beneath the rain's dampness, beneath the washed cotton coolness of the linen. The pavilion is open-sided, but not vague. It has structure in every direction. Posts rising at the corners, beams carrying the roof, floorboards laid in long, dark lines. You feel that structure less as something seen than as something trusted. It stays steady around you while the leaves move and the water moves and the fan turns. You shift again, smaller this time, just enough to let your shoulders sink into a kinder angle. The sheet draws with you in a faint glide. The mattress answers with another hushed release of air and fabric, then becomes still. That little response from the bed is oddly reassuring. It means the bed yields under you. The pillow cools where you have not touched it yet. The linen warms where your body has rested longer. The fan keeps the difference between those two temperatures from disappearing entirely. This, too, becomes part of your comfort. Not one unchanging sensation, but a slow exchange. Cool cloth taking warmth. Warm skin meeting moving air. The mattress shaping itself by degrees. None of it dramatic enough to call movement, yet all of it making the bed feel more lived in, more exact. For a little while, you notice the line of your spine against the mattress. Not sharply, just the general length of it. From the base of your skull, down through the middle of your back, to the heavier resting place of your hips. The support under you is broad enough that no single point has to work very hard. The lower back eases. The ribs spread more comfortably on the inhale. On the exhale, your weight settles back into it. Above, the fan completes another turn. The click comes and goes. A faint timber creak follows somewhere high in the roof, softened by thatch and distance. You do not separate it from the fan for long. The two sounds belong to the same overhead world. Wood, rattan, turning air, the patient architecture of night shelter. Beneath them, the stream remains a low thread. Beyond them, rain continues to sort itself over leaves and screens. You are no longer arranging the room in your mind. You know where things are well enough. The net tied back, the posts at the corners, the open sides screened with bamboo lattice and fine mesh, the dark floorboards below, the roof high above. That is enough. Familiarity has replaced orientation. And because you know the room, you can let yourself be less watchful inside it. Your breathing slows not by decision, but by comfort. Inhale. The air is warm and slightly damp, carrying a trace of clean wood and rain. Exhale. The sheet brushes your side as your ribs settle. Inhale. The fan's circulation passes over your forehead and throat. Exhale. The mattress receives your weight again a little farther down the bed. The linen lies smooth across your legs, with only one small crease near the knee where the fabric has gathered. You could flatten it if you wanted, but there is no need. The crease is cool on one side and warmed on the other. It gives your skin something slight to notice before noticing fades again. The tied gauze at the bedposts remains still for several breaths, then stirs by almost nothing as the fan's current shifts through the open room. Not enough to flutter, just enough to alter the drape of one fold. Then it hangs as before. The night insects stay low beneath everything else, more texture than song. A board somewhere in the teak floor lets out a tiny, dry note, then rests. Rain passes from one layer of leaves to another. The rounded click returns, dependable in its place. Your body receives these not as information now, but as conditions already understood. They do not ask for interpretation. They simply continue while your attention narrows further inward, toward the nearest and most reliable facts. The coolness under your shoulder, the warmth along your arm, the broad support beneath your back, the unhurried movement of air over skin. And with each breath, that support feels less like an object under you and more like linen, mattress, pillow, timber, air, working together so evenly that you stop noticing where one ends and the next begins. You lie higher than the stream, higher than the wet leaves, higher than the dark earth receiving the rain. Yet your body has no need to hold itself against that height. The pavilion does that. The bed does that. You are free to rest your full weight here. Another breath, another turning of the fan, another mild click in the same place. The sheet remains cool where it can, warm where it has learned you, and smooth beneath your shoulder that your attention can settle there for a long time without finding any reason to move. Chapter 4. Fruit in the Night Air. The sheet remains cool where it can, warm where it has learned you, and smooth enough beneath your shoulder that your attention can settle there for a long time without finding any reason to move. A tiny ceramic touch comes from beside the bed. Not much more than that. A faint tick under the fan and rain, as if one small dish on the low tray has settled more firmly against lacquered wood. Porcelain or glazed earthenware, meeting the tray with the lightest contact, then becoming still again. The sound is so small, it does not draw you out of rest. It only confirms nearness. From there, you're noticing drifts only a little, just enough to find the tray again in the dark. It has been there all along, low beside the bed, near enough that you could reach it without lifting more than an arm. In the dim pavilion, it is only a darker shape against dark teak, its lacquer catching almost no light at all. Only a faint, low gleam when the fan turns overhead and the room shifts by a shade. The fruit on it keeps its own cool. Even from here, you can feel something of that coolness in the air near your hand. A small, stored freshness held in cut flesh against the warm night. Set here before the rain settled into its long pattern. For a moment, you imagine one slice lifted almost to the mouth, the coolness arriving before taste does, the body already aware of it. But nothing needs to be eaten. That is part of the comfort. The fruit is close enough to alter the air, close enough to wake a slight awareness in the mouth. And still, you remain still. Mango comes first, because it is the easiest to picture. A slice of it would bend a little if lifted. Not enough to fall apart, only enough to show its softness. Silk is the nearest word for it. Not the shine of silk under bright light, but the way silk moves over skin without resistance. The way it has almost no grain at all. You can feel that texture without touching it. Can almost sense the chilled surface giving way to warmer sweetness beneath. In the warm night air, the thought of that coolness is its own small ease. Then papaya, thicker and more yielding, with a velvet to it that seems made for this hour. Its color is hidden now by the dark, but you know the low, rich orange it carries. If mango is silk, papaya is velvet brushed one way, then the other. Soft, quiet, with more body to it, less brightness, more calm. It does not call attention to itself. It waits, and then snake fruit, cut and set among the softer slices, bringing its own firmer temptation. Its flesh has that polished, almost apple-like shine when opened, but denser, closer grained, with a crisp, clean answer in it. Even imagined, it feels cooling, not cold like metal, but like fruit kept in shade, rinsed and dried, left for a little while in a chilled bowl. Silk, velvet, and that bright, crisp finish. Each one distinct, each one prepared with care for a warm, rainy night. You do not need to reach for any of it. The tray is not asking anything. It is simply there within easy distance. A small domestic kindness in the dark. The same care that stretched the white percale smooth across the mattress, that tied back the gauzy mosquito net at the 4 posts, so the bed stayed open to the air. Also set down chilled slices where your hand could find them if it wished. You feel the care without needing to answer it. Above you, the fan goes on with its broad, patient turning. The woven rattan blades move the air just enough to keep it from settling too close to the skin. Once each rotation comes that rounded click. Familiar now, almost part of your own breathing. Between those clicks, rain traces its layered way through leaves and screens and down into the ravine. The stream below continues as a low, liquid line under everything else, more felt than heard when you stop trying to separate it from the rain. The pavilion keeps its height around you. The along roof rises into darkness overhead, its thatch absorbing what little sound reaches it. The teak floorboards still carry the day's stored warmth, though from the bed, you meet them only by imagination now. Broad, dark boards under the low stand, under the tray, under the folded batik at the foot of the mattress. The whole room has that balanced feeling of timber built above ground and used to weather. Not rigid, not frail. Simply settled into its own way of standing among trees. A faint scent lifts when the fan turns through a warmer pocket of air. Fruit, yes, but only barely. More a suggestion than a fragrance. The cleaner smell is the cotton under your cheek, and beneath that, the dry trace from the folded batik at your feet. Sun-warmed cotton remains in it, though the sun itself has long gone from the sky. Cedar, too, very light, from wherever it was stored before being laid across the end of the bed. In this humid room, that dry, folded cloth has a particular presence. You can sense it without touching it, the way one senses an extra layer available if the skin ever asks for it. The batik stays neatly folded, a low weight near your feet. It changes the shape of the bed, almost not at all. Only enough that you know where the mattress ends and that dry cotton begins. You can picture the edge of it, the pattern hidden by dimness. The cloth itself thin but substantial, not heavy enough to trap heat, only enough to offer a different kind of contact from the sheet. If you drew it closer later, it would settle over your shins and knees with hardly any weight. For now, it remains where it is, carrying its faint cedar note into the rain-breathed air. After the tiny ceramic note, the room returned immediately to its previous rhythm, though nothing had really interrupted it. Fan, rain, stream below. A leaf brushing the outer mesh. The occasional knock from water slipping off a broad banana leaf onto the veranda edge. Each sound arrives with enough space around it that you can feel its shape before it fades into the others. You imagine, for a moment, the cool surface of the lacquer itself, smooth under the pads of the fingers, slightly heavier in feeling than wood alone, with that finished density lacquer gives. The tray would be dry despite the night, because it is undercover, because this part of the pavilion stays protected while the jungle drinks. A bead of condensation might gather along the cut side of a fruit slice, but even that would remain contained, neat, attended to. There is comfort in that order, not strictness, just the sense that everything needed for this hour has been placed within reach and left undisturbed. Your mouth does not water. Hunger does not rise. Instead, there is only an appreciation of temperature and care. Cool fruit in warm air, dry cloth in humid dark, crisp linen under the length of you. The body reads these things before thought does. A chilled slice nearby can be restful, even uneaten. A folded throw can be reassuring before it is ever touched. The room is full of these small provisions, and because none of them demands anything, they settle into the same field as the rain and fan, part of the ease of being here. You feel again where the sheet lies over your hip and along your thigh, where one knee has made a slight hollow in the mattress, where your shoulder is supported by the smooth pull of the percale. The bed gives back exactly enough. Not a sinking softness, not a hard flatness, but that broad, steady support that lets the muscles stop making corrections. At the foot of the bed, the batik marks another layer, another possibility, and the tray beside you marks another. Between them, you are bracketed by care in two forms: covering on one side, sweetness on the other. The rain briefly thickens on the leaves beyond the screens, and the sound grows fuller without growing loud. Wet palm tips move against the mesh with a brushed, passing contact, then drift away again. Somewhere lower down, water gathers itself and drops from a banana leaf to the wooden edge of the veranda with that familiar, muted knock. The note is rounded by wet wood. It does not echo. It simply appears and is gone. Your attention returns to the fruit because it is one of the few cool things in the room that is not cloth or water. Mango would yield at once, almost creamy at the center. Papaya would meet the tongue with a softer weight, then loosen. Snake fruit would answer with a cleaner resistance and a bright finish. You do not have to taste them to know this. The knowledge is already in your mouth, as memory and imagination together. Enough to let the senses rest there without moving toward it. This, too, is part of night comfort. Not consumption, but availability. The fan turns. Click. Another turn. The air moves over your forearm and across the sheet, carrying a trace of cool from the tray and a trace of dry cotton from the folded batik. The smells are slight enough that they come and go, surfacing only when your breathing happens to meet them. Teak below, rain outside, linen close to the face, fruit near the hand, cedar at the foot of the bed. Each one appears for a moment, then recedes before the next arrives. You find yourself liking the fact that the tray is low and close, not elevated or ceremonious. It belongs to the room the way a bedside glass of water belongs to a room. Useful, unannounced, right where it should be. The lacquer gives it a little richness, the chilled fruit a little luxury. But the feeling is still domestic rather than grand. Someone thought of the hour. Someone knew that sweetness in small cut pieces, cool against the heat of the night, could be more comforting than any larger gesture. The pavilion remains open on its screened sides, and because of that openness, the fruit is part of the same atmosphere as the rain. If this were a sealed room, the tray would be separate from the weather, an indoor thing apart from the dark outside. Here, it is different. The mango and papaya and snake fruit sit in the same moving air that has passed through wet leaves and over the ravine. The night reaches them too, though lightly, and that makes their coolness feel even more precise. At the foot of the bed, the Batik releases another faint trace of its stored dryness as the air shifts. Not stronger, just easier to notice for a breath or two. Cotton that has known sun, cedar that has known shelves or a chest. You can almost feel the texture of the folded cloth with your feet, even before touching it. Lighter than a blanket, smoother than a towel, with enough body to drape rather than cling. It belongs to later in the night, perhaps, or perhaps only to the comfort of knowing it is there. The tray remains where it settled after that tiny ceramic note. The fruit keeps its cool. The fan continues its circular work overhead. Rain moves from leaf to leaf and down to wood, then on toward the ravine stream below, where all water eventually becomes one lower, steadier sound. You lie among these small provisions and do nothing with them. That is enough. The sheet under you stays clean and cool in the places not yet warmed. The air on your skin is damp, but not heavy. The Batik rests at your feet with its dry, folded promise. Beside the bed, the lacquer tray waits in the dark, close enough to cool the air near your hand. Mango with its silk, papaya with its velvet, snake fruit with its crisp shine. Chapter 5. Frangipani and Riverstone. The sheet under you stays cool or your arm has not yet rested long. And from that coolness, your attention drifts a little farther across the room. Not by sight so much as by knowing where each thing is in the dark. The bed beneath you, the teak floorboards beyond, the open edges screened in bamboo lattice and fine mesh, and just past the bed's near circle of linen and air, the wash alcove, where the stone basin cools the room. You do not need to turn toward it to feel it there. Even in the warm, rain-breathed night, the basin carries its own temperature into the space. The stone stays cool. It cools the thought of your hands before your hands ever touch it. From where you lie, you can almost trace its shape by by habit alone. The shallow curve of the basin, the faintly irregular rim under the fingertips, the darker wall behind it, where damp has deepened the grain of shadow. The scent reaches you in intervals so light, you notice it most when you stop trying to notice anything at all. Frangipani soap first, creamy and pale in the air, and under it, the mineral smell of stone. The room has been warm around you from the start, but not all of it is the same warmth. The bed keeps one kind, the teak another. The alcove keeps the coolest part of the night, and because of that, the cool alcove makes the room feel larger. Cloth near your skin, timber under the bed, stone beyond the bed, open dark beyond the stone. The fan turns overhead. Its woven rattan blades move the air in broad, patient circles. And with each rotation comes that familiar rounded click. Never sharp, never out of place. Just one small point in the turning where wood and mechanism meet and continue on. You have heard it long enough now that it no longer arrives as a separate sound. It belongs with the rain on leaves, the low stream below, the slight movement of the sheet when you breathe in more deeply. The room is full, but nothing in it crowds you. Your shoulder settles another fraction into the mattress. The percale answers with a dry, smooth hush, cooler near the edge of the pillow, warmer where your neck has rested. One knee eases outward under the sheet. Your heel finds a place where the linen is tucked less tightly and stays there. In this kind of night, comfort is made of very small adjustments, almost too slight to call movement. The bed receives them all without comment. Above, under the high along roof, the fan goes on turning. Beyond the bed, the stone basin stays cool. You can imagine the alcove floor under bare feet, teak giving way to the denser chill of stone nearby, the kind of change the body notices at once. The basin's carved edge would feel faintly damp in the humid air. Not wet exactly, only cooled by it. The soap would leave a clean slip on the skin, and then a fragrance so light it would remain only in the palms for a little while. Even from here, with your arms still at rest on the sheet, the thought of that cool stone has a settling effect. Rain continues outside in layers. One part of it moves through the broad banana leaves before it ever reaches the veranda. One part threads through palm fronds and gathers at their tips. One part brushes the screens and changes there into a finer sound, filtered by mesh and lattice. And under all of it, lower than the rest and much farther away, the Ravine stream keeps its continuous undertone. From this height, it has lost the bright edges of running water. You do not hear splashing or current. You hear steadiness, a long, liquid line beneath the room, beneath the rain, beneath even the fan's measured turning. It is the stream that makes the height of the pavilion feel most real at night. The water is far below, softened by foliage and distance. You rest above it, dry among the timbers, while the dark drops away somewhere beyond the screens. The stream does that continuously, without insistence. A faint trace of Frangipani comes again, not enough to fill the room, only enough to touch the air near your face, and then thin back into the warmth. It mingles with the clean scent of the sheets, the dry cotton note from the folded batik at your feet, the rain-damp greenness from outside. You find yourself tracing these relations without effort, as if the room could be known by touch alone. The teak floorboards still carry some of the day in them, not heat exactly, but a stored warmth that keeps them from ever feeling stark against the night air. You sensed it earlier in the room's atmosphere, the way wood that has spent a long day under tropical light goes on releasing a little of that gathered warmth after dark. In the alcove, though, the stone interrupts that sequence. It cools the line of the room. Thatched roof above, floorboards below, stone basin off to one side, open rain beyond. The fan clicks once, then again after the long turn between. You do not count the revolutions. You only feel that each one passes and makes room for another. The rain does not hurry. The stream does not vary enough to mark a minute from the next. Even the occasional drop from the banana leaf to the wooden edge of the veranda arrives less like interruption than punctuation. A muted knock that appears and fades into the larger field of water. In the wash alcove, somewhere you cannot see, a bead of water releases. It falls into the stone basin with a clear, small note. The sound is brighter than the rain, brighter than the stream, because stone gives it shape. For a moment, the whole alcove becomes more distinct in your mind. The drop makes the basin briefly distinct. Then the note is gone. The room closes over it at once, not by silence, but by continuity. Fan overhead, rain at the screens, stream below, your own breathing moving in and out of the warm dark. That single drop leaves behind a sharper sense of the basin's presence. Not because anything has changed, only because the room has briefly shown you one of its inner surfaces. The alcove is near enough to belong to your resting place, yet separate enough to keep its own little climate. Stone and soap, damp air, a place for rinsing hands, cooling wrists, hearing water touch carved rock. You remain where you are, and still the mind can move there and return without effort. The way attention drifts along a familiar room in darkness and never loses its footing. Your chest rises against the sheet's light weight. On the exhale, the fabric settles back over your ribs. The air on your forearms feels warmer than the linen under them. At the back of your neck, there is a narrow path of moving cool from the fan. Along one ankle, where the sheet has loosened, the night air reaches more directly. These are the nearest edges of the world now. Yet even as your attention narrows to skin and cloth, the basin remains in the room, like a cooler thought nearby, and the stream remains below, like a lower note held under everything else. You do not need to choose between near and far. It keeps the intimate things close enough to feel. The crisp sheet, the pillow's cooler side, the slight give of the mattress where your weight has settled. And it keeps the farther things present without requiring anything from you. The stone basin in its alcove, the rain passing through leaves and screens, the ravine stream below in the dark. The room is open-sided, but not diffuse. Each part has its place. Wood warm, stone cool, linen dry, air humid, water always moving somewhere beyond sight. A palm tip brushes the mesh and slides away. The sound is brief and fibrous, softer than the fan, softer than even the nearest rain. You hear it because the rest of the room has become so legible. Small sounds no longer have to announce themselves. They arrive at their own size. They remain that size. Nothing expands into significance. The Frangipani note returns once more, this time mixed with the faint, damp mineral scent from the basin, strongly enough that the two seem inseparable. Not perfume, not garden, but something cooler and more pared back. In the warm pavilion, that cooler scent moves like a narrow stream of air through the larger atmosphere. Far below, the ravine water continues. If you listen toward it, the stream seems almost to flatten into a surface. One steady plane under the room. If you stop listening toward it, it remains anyway, carrying the sense of depth without requiring your attention. The rain above it changes texture as it passes from leaf to leaf, from frond to screen, from gathered drop to wood. The stream does not. It simply goes on. That constancy changes the way the bed feels under you. The height feels clearer, the pavilion more clearly aloft, your own stillness more complete by contrast. The mosquito net, tied back at the 4 posts, does not stir much tonight. It hangs in pale folds at the edges of the bed, almost absent until the fan shifts the air enough to draw one edge a little nearer and let it fall back again. Cloth near cloth, gauze near percale. The contrast between them is easy to imagine, even without reaching out. One crisp and cool, one airy and barely there. Beyond them, the alcove stone remains the opposite of both, dense and cool and quietly fixed. You let the room reduce itself to these few relations. The mind does not need to make anything of them. It only follows them as they are, and in following them becomes simpler itself. Another muted drop falls from the banana leaf to the veranda edge. Then the fan's rounded click comes through again. Then the stream, which never stopped. Your jaw loosens a little more. The weight of your head on the pillow spreads more evenly. One hand, resting near your side, feels heavier than it did a few minutes ago, as if the mattress has learned its shape and no longer gives any reason to adjust. In the wash alcove, the carved stone keeps its patient chill. The soap keeps its pale frangipani trace. The teak keeps the memory of the day. And you remain in the bed between these temperatures, dry under the high thatch, while the dark beyond the screens deepens and the water below goes on speaking in that continuous, lowered tone, until even the thought of the basin, the stone, the stream, and the sheet becomes less like naming things and more like resting among them. Chapter 6. Offerings at the threshold, and you remain in the bed between these temperatures, dry under the high thatch, while the dark beyond the screens deepens, and the water below goes on speaking in that continuous, lowered tone. A warmer current of air comes through the doorway. You feel it first along your bare arm, where it lies outside the sheet, then at your neck. It is not hotter, only less cooled by moving water and shaded leaves. A moment later, the faintest sweetness reaches you. Sandalwood, thinned by moisture, softened by time. And only then does your attention settle near the doorway, where the Kanang sari still rests on the floorboards in its little palm leaf square. From there, your attention drifts no farther than the threshold, not as a place to cross, only as one more edge of the pavilion, another point where the room thins into night. You do not need to see the offering clearly to know where it is. Bed, table, screens, alcove, threshold. Beyond that, the veranda, the wet leaves, the dark drop toward the ravine. Flower petals gathered into a woven leaf tray. The trace of incense burned down some time ago. In the damp warmth, the sharper smoke has changed. What remains is sweeter now, finer, mixed with teak that has given back the day's stored heat, and with the rain-breathed air moving through the open sides of the pavilion. The petals have been there for hours. You can imagine how they have softened in the humidity. Their edges no longer crisp, their color deepening as moisture settles into them. The fruit on its lacquer tray, the tied-back net at the bedposts, the damp mineral breath from the wash alcove, the rain sorting itself across leaf and screen and timber. The fan turns overhead. Its woven rattan blades move the air just enough to touch your forehead, your throat, the upper line of your chest above the sheet. And each full circle ends in that familiar, rounded click. By now, the sound no longer stands apart from the room. It lands inside the larger pattern, one measured point among rain, stream, insects, and the occasional light creak high in the roof. At the screens, wet palm tips brush and slip away again. The contact is slight, more texture than sound. A passing stroke against the fine mesh and bamboo lattice. The screens soften it. Broad rain on leaves remains outside in its fullness, while only the softened parts arrive to you. Sifted water, leaf friction, the lower rush of the stream far below. Even the palms at the edge reach the room only by their tips. You lie still enough to feel how complete that boundary is. Air comes through. Scent comes through. Sound comes through. But the bed stays dry. The percale remains cool under your forearm, and the teak floorboards beyond the mattress keep their own stored warmth. The room is open without being exposed. You have learned that already. And and so your mind does not need to test it again. It can rest at the threshold without moving toward it. Another turn of the fan, another click. Then the muted knock from the banana leaf to the wooden edge of the veranda. That sound has become one of the night's markers. Not regular enough to count, not random enough to startle. Water gathers on the broad leaf until the weight changes, then slips free and meets wood with a rounded tap. Afterward, the rain goes on in its many smaller contacts. A little later, it happens again. You do not follow the intervals. You only receive them. The sandalwood reaches you once more, faintly. It is so light now that it might be missed if you were trying to notice it. But lying here, with your breathing level and your eyes closed, or nearly closed, you catch it as it passes through the room. A dry sweetness, thinned by moisture, made softer by time. It mingles with the scent of the palm leaf tray itself, green and fibrous, in a way that belongs to woven things still close to the plant they came from. Fruit sliced and chilled. Soap set by the stone basin. The batik folded at the foot of the bed. Petals placed near the threshold before the rain settled in for the night. The fan continues overhead. Rain settles over the leaves in layers too many to sort. The stream below keeps its unbroken undertone. Somewhere near the screens, a palm tip touches the mesh and drags away with a damp, brushed sound that barely reaches the bed. You let your jaw loosen a little more. Your tongue rests lower in your mouth. The muscles around your eyes stop doing even the small work of attending. One shoulder eases deeper into the mattress, and the sheet shifts against your ribs with that familiar percale hush. Nothing in the room asks for response. Not because it is empty, but because it is already arranged. The incense has burned. The petals have been placed. The rain has found its routes through leaf and air and timber. Your only part in it is to lie here while these things continue. If you opened your eyes fully, you might make out the faintest difference between the pavilion floor and the deeper dark beyond. You might catch the pale suggestion of petals near the doorway, or the low shape of the offering tray against teak. But you do not need the room to sharpen. It is enough that it exists around you, in remembered positions and repeated sensations. The banana leaf releases another drop. Wood answers with the same rounded knock. Then, after a pause, one more. The sequence is slower this time, as if more water has been gathering before each release. Between those taps, the rain on the finer leaves fills the space with a steadier grain, and the stream below smooths it all into one lowered band of sound. The fan moves above it. Your breathing moves within it. Even the faint scent of sandalwood seems to come and go according to the same long measure. You become aware of the threshold less as a line and more as a change in texture. Inside, linen, teak, the cooled skin of fruit on the tray beside the bed, stone in the alcove, the dry fold of batik at your open drop toward the ravine, water collecting and falling. At the threshold, those textures meet in the smallest possible way. Petals on wood, incense ash gone faint, humid air moving inward. That recognition brings a brief fullness to your chest, hardly more than one deeper breath. Something softens under the sternum, a small release between the ribs, the sense of being well placed. Then that too becomes just another sensation and passes into the rhythm already there. The palm tips return to the screens. A brushed contact. A pause. Then rain on the broader leaves beyond. The fan circles. Click. The offering near the threshold gives off almost no scent now. Only the faintest sweetness when the air shifts in its favor. Yet, because it has been noticed, it remains part of the room more distinctly than before. You carry its presence the way you carry the presence of the basin in the alcove, or the fruit by the bed. Not as an object to inspect, but as a settled point in the pavilion's arrangement. Your hand lies open on the sheet. The fabric beneath your palm has warmed where you have rested on it, while the fold near your wrist still keeps a trace of coolness. Humid air moves over your forearm. The mattress answers your weight without change or complaint. Above, under the high thatch, the fan continues its unhurried circuit, and each rounded click arrives exactly as expected, then disappears into the larger field of sound. Near the threshold, the petals continue to soften in the night air. Their edges curl inward by degrees too small to see. Moisture gathers and redistributes. The palm leaf tray holds its shape. A thread of sandalwood remains in it, almost gone, almost part of the teak itself now. Rain reaches the veranda, the screens, the leaves. The pavilion stays dry. You do not need to hold all these details at once. It is enough to let them drift near one another. The room receives each one in turn and lets it fade back into the whole. Your mind begins to do the same. It no longer presses forward from one thing to the next. It settles, returns, and settles again. Another warmer current passes through, weaker than before. Your skin notices it first. A mild change at the throat. A lessened coolness along the arm outside the sheet. Then, slowly, the sweetness near the doorway lifts once more. Not stronger, only briefly clearer, as if warmth has raised it from the woven tray where it lay close among the petals. Then the fan smooths the air again. The threshold recedes. Not because it is gone, but because it has joined the rest of the pavilion in becoming known. The offering remains where it was placed. The petals continue their slow softening. Beyond them, the veranda receives another drop from the banana leaf. The palms touch the screens and draw back. The stream below keeps speaking in its low, continuous tone. And you stay where you are, above it all, under the high thatch, while the faint sweetness near the doorway thins with the passing air. Chapter 7. The Stream Below the Ravine. The stream in the ravine below, and you stay where you are, above it all, under the high thatch, while the faint sweetness near the doorway comes and goes with the air, and the fan turns on. After a while, your attention drifts downward, not with your eyes. The dark below the pavilion has already become too complete for that, layered with leaves and rain and the depth of the ravine. You do not picture the stream so much as here where it must be, far below the teak floorboards and the veranda edge, below the wet tangle of roots and stones and broad leaves. At first, it is only part of the night's lower register, a cool thread under warmer sounds. Then, as you keep still, it begins to separate itself by texture alone. Rain arrives in touches and surfaces. The stream does not. The rain breaks itself over banana leaves, over palms, over the mesh and lattice at the pavilion's edges. It lands, gathers, slips, and falls again. It changes shape from one place to the next. But the water below keeps one long line. It does not tap or scatter. It moves through the dark in a continuous phrase, too far away to hear as splashing, too softened by height and foliage to sound bright. What reaches you is the joined sound of water already committed to its path. You listen to it without trying. The fan turns overhead. Its woven rattan blades move the humid air in a broad, slow circle. And once in each rotation comes that rounded click. Familiar now, almost absorbed into the turning itself. Between one click and the next, the stream continues. Between one strand of rain and the next, the stream continues. It does not come forward so much as remain. And your breathing begins to notice that steadiness. The sheet stays cool where it lies flat across your middle. Cooler still where one leg has made a fold and left another stretch untouched. Beneath your shoulder, the mattress gives back its patient support. The tied-back mosquito net hangs at the posts without stirring much, pale in the dimness. And the high thatch above receives the fan's moving air and lets it pass down again. You lie inside all of it, and your ear keeps tracing the same low water below. It is strange, in the most restful way, how far a sound can travel upward and arrive gentled by distance. Down there, the stream must be moving around stones, slipping over roots, widening in one place and narrowing in another. But none of that reaches you as detail. Height has edited it. Leaves have edited it. Rain has laid its own veil over the top. What remains is the stream's body without its edges, a liquid undertone that rounds out the night from beneath. You hear the insects too, though only just. They keep low in the mix, a fine grain set behind the rain. Not the sharp insistence of a single call, but a thin, even threading through the dark growth outside the screens. Their sound does not compete with the water. It settles into it, becoming part of the same field your hearing rests in without effort. Another turn of the fan, the rounded click, then the long water below. You begin to notice that your mind no longer reaches for each sound separately every time it arrives. Earlier in the night, rain on leaves was rain on leaves. The fan was the fan. A drop on the veranda edge was its own small event. Now they start to join. The ear still knows them apart, if it chooses to, but it no longer needs to choose. The night can be heard all at once. A breath in, air damp from rain, moved by the fan, passes over your face and throat. It is warmer than the sheet and cooler than your skin where it has rested against the mattress. A breath out. Below, the stream keeps its place. You might think of it as the lowest floor of the room, though it is far beyond the room and far below it. The pavilion has its teak boards, dark and faintly warm from the day. Beneath those, open space. Beneath that, the descending ravine, wet leaves, trunks, stones, and at the base of all that hidden depth, the narrow current speaking upward through everything above it. Not loudly, not clearly, simply without stopping. The rain thins for a moment. It does not stop. It only eases, enough that one layer lifts from the others. In that brief opening, the stream comes through more plainly, as if a hand had lowered one instrument in an orchestra and left the deeper note untouched. You hear more movement in it now, more contour, not enough to map it, only enough to feel a slight quickening where water passes over uneven ground. The undertone becomes less of a hum and more of a run. You rest there with it for a few breaths. The fan turns. Click. The insects remain, a fine, dark shimmer. And the stream, briefly less veiled, seems nearer than before, though it is not nearer at all. It is only less covered. Your ribs rise and fall in a pace that no longer needs managing. The mattress receives the weight of your back, your hip, the backs of your thighs. The percale keeps its dry coolness where the air reaches it. At the foot of the bed, the folded batik throw stays where it was left, carrying its stored dryness into the room without asking to be touched. Beside you, the fruit on the lacquer tray remains untouched too. Chilled slices in the warm dark, their sweetness present more as memory than as scent. Nothing here requires movement. The room has already arranged itself. Then the leaves gather the rain again. The fuller pattern returns so gradually that you only know it by what becomes less distinct. The stream does not fade exactly. It sinks back under the leaf fall and the soft patter at the pavilion's edges, under the occasional brush of wet palm tips against the mesh, under the recurring muted knock from the banana leaf to the wooden edge of the veranda. Water above, water below, air moving through, fan turning overhead. Your hearing loosens its focus and lets them merge again. That merging is its own kind of relief. you do not have to follow any one sound to the end. You can let one pass into another and another. The rain on broad leaves becomes rain on finer leaves, then mesh, then wood. The stream below runs through all of it, like a darker dye through cloth. The insects keep their low thread. The fan circles and marks one point in each turn with that rounded click. A shape your ear has learned so well that even when you are not attending to it directly, you know when it comes. The pavilion itself adds almost nothing, and that too is part of the comfort. A minute settling somewhere in the timber. The faintest answer from the bed frame as your weight rests more fully to one side. Then stillness again. The structure remains what it has been all night. Elevated, dry, open to the air and screened from the wet. Steady in the weather. You lie high in it and listen low. The stream below has a way of making the space feel deeper without making it feel larger. Your thoughts do not travel outward with it. They travel downward and soften there, as if the mind too can slope into the ravine and lose its sharper edges among leaves and water. You are not thinking about where the stream begins or where it goes. You are only hearing that it continues. For a little while, the fan and the stream begin to pair themselves. The fan, a broad, circular motion overhead. Air crossing your forehead, your chest, the top sheet. The stream, a narrow, onward motion far below. Too distant to cool the skin, but present as movement all the same. One turns, one runs. Between them, your breath finds a pace that belongs to neither and both. You notice, perhaps, how little effort hearing requires compared with sight. Eyes would have to search the dark. Ears do not search. They receive. They keep receiving, even after attention grows less exact. In this kind of night, that matters. It means you can grow drowsier without losing the room. The room remains legible in sound long after shape has gone. A palm tip brushes the outer mesh and slides away wetly. A few drops gather somewhere beyond the screen and release together. The fan clicks once more. And under these nearer textures, the stream keeps that low, joined sound. Less like separate water now than like continuity itself. The air has changed only a little since evening, but enough for you to feel it. The heat of the day is no longer in the air as such. It remains instead in the teak and in the stored warmth of the roof above, while the rain-breathed current moving through the pavilion carries a cooler skin across your forearms and the side of your neck. The contrast is mild and exact. Dry sheet, humid air, warm timber, low water. Your body reads these differences more simply than thought does. Another breath. The stream below. Another turn. The click. If you listen closely, the stream almost seems to lengthen the silence between other sounds, though it is not silence at all. It fills the intervals so completely that nothing feels absent. When the rain softens, there it is. when the rain thickens, there it remains under the thickness. When the insects rise a fraction and then settle again, the stream still underlies them. It gives the night a floor. You sink a little further into that idea without needing the words for it. A floor below the floorboards, a current below the room, a long, liquid bass note under the rain and fan and breath. The ceiling fan turns on with tireless patience, each blade passing through the same air and changing it slightly. The rounded click arrives and passes. You have heard it so many times now that it no longer divides the night into moments. It rounds them instead. The stream does something similar, though in a lower register, stretching what the click marks into a longer line. Together, they make the hours feel less counted. The rain shifts again across the leaves outside. Not heavier, not lighter, only angled differently for a moment. Enough to alter the texture at the screens. The stream below does not alter. It goes on under the change. And because of that constancy, the whole dark around you feels less like many separate distances and more like one continuous depth. Your jaw loosens another fraction. The pillow keeps its cooler side near your cheek. The sheet lies smooth over your hip. The fan turns. Below in the ravine, the water runs on. And after a while, even those distinctions begin to blur a little. The stream is no longer entirely below because its sound has reached you. The fan is no longer entirely above because its air is on your skin. The rain is no longer entirely outside because its rhythm has entered your breathing. You remain where you are, dry in the bed beneath the high, along roof. But the night arranges itself through you in longer and longer phrases. For a few breaths more, the stream comes through clearly enough to notice as itself. Then, not as itself. Then, simply as part of the night's one low motion. Under the fan, under the rain, under your breathing, carrying on below while you rest above it and drift further into the sound. Chapter 8. The Batik at your feet. At your feet, one corner of the batik loosens. It is no more than a finger's width of release, but the change reaches you at once. A faint, stored warmth slips from the opened edge into the cooler bed air, subtle as breath across the tops of your feet. Beyond the white percale stretched over your shins, the throw rests where it has been folded since evening, dry in the warm, damp night, holding a little warmth from the day. The fan turns overhead. Its woven rattan blades pass through the dark at the same measured pace. And once in each circle comes that rounded click. Familiar now enough that you no longer separate it from the rest of the night. The sound does not interrupt. It marks the turn, then disappears back into the low whir and the rain beyond the pavilion. They lengthen under the sheet. The toes unclench one by one. The ankles let go of their last small brace, and a line of effort you had not noticed eases from shin to knee. The percale stays cool over the fronts of your ankles, crisp and dry against skin still aware of the night air, while the Batik's nearness offers something different. Not coolness, not humidity, but a sheltered dryness with warmth held inside it. Sheet first, smooth and faintly chilled. Then the denser hush of folded cotton nearby, warmer by just enough to be felt. The mattress receives the new heaviness of your lower legs with a hushed give. At the foot of the bed, the Batik keeps most of its shape, but the loosened corner changes the feel of the bed. You can picture the layered folds without lifting your head. The flatter top fold, the eased open edge, the fabric light enough to draw up easily if wanted, substantial enough to keep a little dryness inside itself. In this rain-breathed air, that dry, folded cloth becomes more than part of the room. There is a particular scent to it, clearer now that the fold has opened. Sun-warmed cotton first, then cedar, mild and clean, the trace left from storage. It is drier than the rest of the night, closer to timber and cotton. When it reaches you, your calves soften another fraction into the bed. Rain continues through the leaves outside, and from time to time, one fuller drop makes its familiar muted knock on the wooden edge of the veranda. By now, that sound has become part of the room's measure. The drop gathers somewhere on a broad banana leaf, grows heavy enough to release, then lands on wood below with a rounded note that is over almost before you have fully heard it. Between those knocks, the stream remains under everything, a lower and more continuous line. The insects are there too, but so low and even that they seem woven into the rain. Your awareness narrows again to the bed. The white percale lies cool beneath the backs of your knees, under your hips, beneath one shoulder turned a little deeper into the mattress. It does not cling. It skims the skin with that crisp finish only clean cotton has. And where the sheet creases near your feet, each fold makes a slight ridge before smoothing away again. Near the Batik, the sheet feels cooler still by contrast. Its clean chill more distinct because of the stored warmth waiting just beyond it. If you let one foot drift a little lower beneath the sheet, the difference becomes clearer. The air at the foot of the bed is warmer by just enough to notice, and drier too. Then perhaps the top of your foot finds the very edge through the sheet. Or perhaps the cloth only brushes close enough for your body to register it. Either way, your lower legs ease farther. The fronts of the thighs lengthen. Your heels settle more completely. The foot of the bed feels less exposed. The fan turns. Click. Then the low, revolving breath of it passes over you again. Not cool enough to erase the humidity, only enough to keep the air moving so that the warmth never grows heavy. Your chest rises into that moving air and eases down from it. Your arms rest where they have fallen. The muscles along your thighs loosen another fraction into the mattress. Even your feet, often the last to stay half alert in an unfamiliar bed, begin to trust the place they have come to rest. You notice all this without needing to do anything about it. The loosened corner of cloth has changed the bed's feeling by one small but certain degree. The end of the mattress seems less open now, less like a long, cool stretch extending away from you, more like a place prepared for deeper rest. The batik stays folded at your feet. Because the mosquito net remains tied back, the bed never feels sealed away from the night. Air still passes through. So do the sounds. Rain on leaves, the occasional knock on the veranda edge, the stream below, the fan overhead. The batik adds enclosure of another kind, not by shutting anything out, but by changing what lies within reach. The dead feels more enclosed. You feel that shape now from shoulder to heel. The mattress holds evenly under your side. The sheet lies cooler across the front of your ankles than behind your knees, where your own warmth has gathered. Your hips have settled enough that the surface beneath you feels broad and certain, no longer new. Even untouched, the cloth tucks the space. Another turn of the fan, another click. The sound enters and passes, and your breathing falls into it for a few cycles without effort. Inhale while the blades move through one side of their circle. Exhale before the click returns. Not counted, only matched for a moment, then allowed to drift apart again. The rain does something similar beyond the screens, thickening on one cluster of leaves, thinning on another. Never quite regular, and yet never abrupt. In this kind of night, sameness is not exact repetition. It is a field of small returns. The batik belongs to that field, but now it does more than belong. The loosened edge gives off a little warmth into the cooler air above the sheet. What reaches you is not design, but hand feel remembered through distance. A cloth lighter than a blanket, softer than the crisp sheet, dry in a way that makes the humid air around it more noticeable. Your body keeps answering. The toes remain loose. The ankles stay unguarded. The lower legs grow heavier. Outside, a wet palm tip brushes the mesh and passes on. The sound is slight, more a change in the rain than a separate thing. The fan continues. The stream continues. You stay where you are, farther inside the bed now than before. Your attention no longer traveling so readily to the edges of the pavilion. The room is still there around you, but you need less of it at once. What comes forward instead is contact. The pillow under your head, the sheet over your feet, cool and smooth. The mattress beneath the length of you. The nearby throw changing the air by a degree, and the bed by a little more than that. These are enough. If the corner of the batik has fallen freer, it settles there without further shift. Its released warmth thins into the bed air and becomes part of the whole. The cedar note softens again. The cotton scent remains, mild and dry. You might imagine drawing the throw up later, or you might not. It does not matter yet. The comfort lies already in the way the foot of the bed no longer feels open and distant, but attended to, and could come nearer still. Chapter 9, Timber Breath. And so your attention stays there a while, near your feet, where the dry, folded cloth meets the cool sheet, and the night air moves across both, while the fan turns once more overhead, and clicks, and turns. A small sound comes from the timber, not from the leaves, not from the fan, not from the veranda where the fuller drops still find the wooden edge from time to time. A mild settling passes through one beam, a brief inward note, low and dry, so slight you might miss it. It travels no farther than the room. It fades before it can become a thought. From there, you begin to feel the bed as part of something larger than the mattress alone. Beneath the white percale and the depth of the king bed, beneath the pillow and the slight weight of your legs, there is teak under the bed frame, beams above, dark floorboards stretching outward toward the threshold and the screened edges, all of it raised into the canopy and set so well into its place that even in the rain it feels settled and true, in the way the bed does not shift except by the faintest degree when you breathe more deeply, in the way the floor has kept a little of the day's warmth, though the air has turned wetter and cooler, in the way the high roof gathers the sound of rain and gives it back, softened, spread thin through thatch and distance. The pavilion is open-sided, but not exposed. Air passes through. Sound passes through. Damp leaf scent passes through. And still the room remains dry around you. Timber and cloth and net, all kept under the long, sloping shelter of the alang-alang overhead. The roof is high enough that its presence is mostly known by shape and hush. You can sense the steep rise of it above the fan, the layered thatch, thick enough to dull the sharper edges of weather. Rain reaches it and loses itself there. No hard drumming, only a broad, textured murmur above the slower wheel of the woven rattan blades. Once each turn, that familiar click arrives. Not quite at the top of the room, and not quite near you either, but somewhere between. The fan's passage through the humid dark, the rain moving through leaves beyond the screens, the far stream below the ravine, your own breath entering and leaving without any need to lengthen it or guide it. All of it runs together now, while the pavilion holds the whole arrangement above the ground with a steadiness that the body has already accepted. The floorboards under the bed and out toward the veranda edge are dark with oil and years, smooth where bare feet pass, faintly warmer in their deeper grain. Earlier, they kept the day's heat more clearly. Now that warmth has thinned, but not disappeared. It remains in the wood itself, stored low and slowly released, so that the room is never cold, only varied. Cool at the sheet, warmer in the air, warmer still in the timber. Even the bed's height above the floor, and the floor's height above the slope. and the slope's descent toward the stream feel less like distances than layers. You are not thinking about being high up in any alert way. It is more like the body has learned the room. A pillow that fits the neck. A sheet tucked just loosely enough over one ankle. The fan circling at the pace it has kept all night. The pavilion stands among trunks and leaves. But from here, it feels less perched than anchored. You lie there and feel how old materials behave when they are well made and left to their work. The screens do not shut the night out. They soften it. Let it arrive in pieces that fit the room. A wet palm tip brushes the mesh somewhere to one side, making a faint thread of contact, then slips away again. The bamboo lattice behind it remains as it has been, a measured pattern at the edge of the pavilion. Neither wall nor absence of wall. Only a boundary light enough for air and scent to pass through. That brushing sound comes again after a while, from a slightly different angle, as if a frond has leaned nearer under the weight of water. It touches, glides, and releases. The contact is brief, but it gives shape to the darkness beyond the bed. Not empty darkness, layered darkness. Mesh, lattice, leaves, rain. The drop to the ravine. The stream somewhere under all of it. And above you, the high thatch where weather thins to murmur. You settle a little more fully into the mattress. Not enough to move the room in any visible way. Only enough to feel the bed answer with its familiar depth. One shoulder eases farther down. The back of one thigh finds a cooler stretch of sheet. Your heel shifts a fraction inside the loose fold near your feet. Beneath you, there is the almost imagined give of a bed set on timber raised above the ground. So slight it may be only the body noticing what has always been there. No jolt, no instability. Only the smallest acknowledgement through wood and joinery. Perhaps that is why the openness no longer reads as openness. Not in the way it might have earlier, when the jungle still carried more edges, and each sound arrived separately. Rain can move around it for hours. Air can pass through the screens. Palm tips can brush the mesh. Water can fall in slow, fuller drops from a banana leaf to the wooden edge of the veranda. The stream can continue below, unheard in detail, but always present. Through all of it, the bed stays dry. The sheet stays cool. The roof stays above you. The fan keeps turning. You can sense the posts where the mosquito net is tied back. The pale gauze resting in loose, gathered folds. Still as sails with no sea under them. Beyond those posts, the beams rise and cross. Their surfaces are not visible in full, but the mind traces them anyway, following what the body already knows. Support, span, the pitch of the roof lifting away overhead. The mattress gives because it is meant to. The bed frame bears because it is meant to. The floorboards take that weight and keep it. The roof sheds the wet night. Nothing strains. Even the small creaks, when they come, are not signs of weakness, but of material answering moisture and air, settling by degrees into the weather that surrounds it. You listen for one of those minute responses, and hear instead the low field of the room as a whole. Fan above, rain beyond, stream below, insects held low under everything, the occasional contact of leaf to screen. And between those sounds, not silence exactly, but a dry wooden smell inside the open air. The teak floorboards still carry a little resinous scent if you attend closely enough, especially where the night air brushes over them and rises. It is not strong, just a dry wooden note under the wetter smells of leaf and rain. It mixes with traces you have known all evening. The Frangipani soap from the wash alcove, now distant and cool. The faint sweetness near the threshold, where the offering restless. The clean mineral thread from stone. The cotton dry note of the folded batik at your feet. None of these come forward fully. They remain where they belong. Small points within the room, while timber forms the larger shape around them. You find yourself aware, too, of the pavilion's slight give. Not a sway you could measure, not movement in any dramatic sense. Only the almost imagined response of a structure raised above ground and built among living things. The weather shifts through the leaves. Water gathers and falls. Air moves under the eaves and through the screens. Somewhere a branch takes more weight, then less. The room rests a fraction differently on itself. So little that the thought of motion is stronger than the motion itself. Yet the body understands it and loosens further. Not only the bed, the whole room participates. The roof above, the beams crossing, the floor beneath, the screens at the sides. All of it making a suspended shape around rest. You are not enclosed tightly. The air would not allow that. But you are placed. That is the feeling. Placed on the mattress, under the thatch, within the timber outline of the pavilion, above the dark line of the stream. Again, a palm tip meets the mesh. This time, the sound is longer. A wet brushing line drawn lightly along the screen before it lifts away. A little later, from the veranda edge, one fuller drop arrives from a banana leaf with that muted wooden knock you have heard all night. Not loud, merely distinct enough to mark one moment from the next. Then, rain resumes its finer pattern in the leaves, and the room returns to blended sound. The high alang-alang roof keeps its hush overhead, receiving rain and giving it back softened. The beams remain steady. The dark teak under the bed and out across the room continues to hold a trace of the day. The lattice and mesh at the edges keep shaping the night into textures you can hear, but do not need to follow. And the fan goes on with its slow circular labor, woven blades turning through warm air, the click returning once each rotation. You lie within all of this and let the structure of the room do what it has been doing since you first settled here. carry the bed, carry the air, carry the sounds, carry your resting weight without effort. Turn, air, turn, air. Click. Another minute timber note comes from somewhere farther off in the pavilion. So faint, it is barely more than a change in pressure through the frame. It disappears at once. The floor remains steady. The bed remains level. The roof keeps the rain where it belongs. Your shoulders sink another fraction. The muscles along your back stop keeping any unnecessary watch. The back of your neck yields more fully to the pillow. Even your hands, wherever they have come to rest, seem heavier in the humid air, less interested in arrangement. Above and around you, the pavilion continues in the same old materials and the same measured responses. Teak, thatch, mesh, bamboo, rain, fan, dark. You can let the room keep its balance. Let the beams answer the weather. Let the screens take the touch of wet leaves. Let the roof gather the night rain and soften it. Let the floorboards hold their warmth until it thins away on its own. Let the fan turn and click and turn again, while the bed remains high in the timber frame and the ravine stream keeps sounding far below. And the whole pavilion carries you a little deeper into the weathered hush of the night. Chapter 10. Rain on banana leaves. You let the room keep its balance, and after a while, you begin to know its pattern. Rain gathers somewhere out in the broad leaves, slips toward an edge, and then one drop at a time falls. A muted knock touches the wooden lip of the veranda. Not loud, not sudden, just wood receiving water. Then the rain resumes its finer texture in the palms and the mesh, and the fan turns overhead, and your breath goes on under all of it. After some time, another drop finds the same path. Leaf, drop, wood. It is not a rhythm that asks to be counted. If you notice it at all, you notice it the way you notice the rounded click in the fan's turning. Not as information, but as shape. The woven rattan blades circle through the warm dark above the bed, stirring the damp night air just enough that the cooler surface of the white percale stays clear against your skin. At one point in each rotation comes that familiar rounded click. Then air again. Then another turn. The sound has lost any edge it once had. It has become part of the room's pulse. Rain arrives, gathers, releases. One broad leaf carries several drops before surrendering them. Another lets go sooner. Somewhere beyond the screens, water slides down the length of a frond and disappears into lower growth without touching timber at all. But one leaf beyond the veranda keeps dropping fuller beads of water at intervals you have begun to know without measuring. Between them, the rain becomes many rains. Some of it brushes through the palm tips and threads the bamboo lattice with a faint, dry-sounding sift though the air itself is humid and warm. Some of it lands flat and full on larger leaves, a broader patter that spreads and then thins. Some reaches the lower dark in a more distant hush you do not separate from the ravine stream unless the ear leans for it. And underneath, always, the stream continues far below the suite, reduced by height and foliage to one continuous liquid undertone. You lie above all of it in the bed's level coolness. The sheet lies smooth over your legs, with one place near your ankle creased into a narrow ridge you can feel if you choose to follow it. The pillow has warmed where your cheek rests and stays cooler at the far side. The tied-back mosquito net hangs at the 4 posts in pale folds that hardly move, except now and then when the fan's air reaches them from a slightly different angle. The teak beneath the bed still carries a trace of the day's stored warmth, though less than before. You do not need to think about any of this for long. It is enough that each thing remains where it has been all night. Another drop. Wood receives it with the same low note. At the edges of the pavilion, wet palm tips touch the mesh and slip away. The contact is brief, more brush than tap. And because the screens stand between you and the leaves, the sound arrives thinned and combed through bamboo. Rain can be heard there in layers. A frond leaning close, the mesh taking the contact, then the leaf easing back under its own weight. The screens soften them. Your attention drifts toward the veranda edge without needing to picture it too clearly. Somewhere beyond the dark floorboards and the open side of the pavilion, water gathers in a central rib, swells, shifts weight, and falls. The wood answers. Then the answer is gone. A brush at the screens, a turn overhead, a rounded click, a drop from the leaf to the wood. Far below, the stream continuing through stone and root and dark. The pavilion remains dry, raised, and open. The high thatch takes the rain above without complaint. The outer screens keep their porous boundary. Air moves through. Scent moves through. Wet leaf smell enters and thins. Somewhere behind you, near the threshold, the trace of sandalwood from the Kanong sari has become so faint that it appears only when a warmer thread of air passes inward. And then it is gone again, into timber and rain breath. None of these things call for your attention. They simply recur. And because they recur, your body trusts them more. Another drop lands, but this time not alone. A short sequence follows it. One, then after a pause, another, then a third, slower still, as if the leaf has grown heavier with water and less interested in letting go all at once. The spacing widens. Each fall takes longer to gather. The wood receives each one with the same softened knock, but the rhythm has eased. You can almost feel the broad leaf bowing under the weight, then righting itself a little, then bowing again. The slower sequence does not stand out as an event. It only deepens what is already there. making it lazier, more drawn out, more in keeping with the hour. Even the rain seems less concerned with arriving quickly. It spreads itself over the foliage and takes longer routes downward. The palm tips at the screens brush and release with less insistence. The stream below remains constant enough to make all these small changes feel held inside something larger and unbroken. Your breath begins to fall into the spaces between the drops without effort. Inhale as the fan turns. Exhale near the click. Rest in the hush after the wood note fades. Then again. The white percale at your chest rises and lowers so lightly that the movement is felt more than seen. Humidity rests on your skin in a fine layer. Not enough to cling, only enough to make the fan's passing air legible. Cool sheet, warm air, cool sheet again. The contrast has become one of the night's steadiest comforts. You feel it where the linen lies flat over your stomach, where your shoulder meets the pillowcase, where one foot has found a cooler patch near the untucked edge. At the perimeter, rain keeps sorting itself by surface. Banana leaf, palm, mesh, timber, lower leaves, ravine, water finding water. Each material has its own register. The banana leaf gives a fuller release. The palms offer a brushed and divided sound. The mesh thins contact into a finer grain. The veranda edge answers in wood, rounded and brief. The stream below carries all of it downward into one continuous line. Another rounded click overhead. The fan's blades move the air across your face, then across your throat, then lower along the sheet. The effect is slight, but because it repeats, your body keeps receiving it. You feel your jaw rest more heavily. Your tongue settles lower in your mouth. One hand, forgotten near your side, loosens in the linen and leaves the fingers less curled than before. The slower drops continue for a while. Just water taking its own time from the broad green curve of leaf to the wooden edge below. Drop. Then rain in smaller textures. Then the stream. Then the fan and its click. Then another drop. You could follow these sounds outward if you wanted, all the way to the screens and down the slope. But the night has become simpler than that. The sounds come to you already softened, already sorted, already carrying only what is needed. You remain where the sheet is coolest and the mattress most familiar, under the high along roof, with the tied-back net at the posts and the dark teak floorboards below. Even the insects seem farther back now, a low thread under the water. The fruit on the lacquer tray beside the bed remains untouched and cold in the dark. No more than a remembered presence at the edge of awareness. The carved stone basin in the wash alcove keeps its cooler mineral breath to itself. The Batik throw stays folded at the foot of the bed, dry and faintly cedar-scented. All of it remains in place. Nothing needs to be reached for. Leaf, drop, wood, parts begin to overlap. The hush after the drop already contains the fan. The fan's turning already contains your breath. The stream below fills the spaces under both. A palm tip touches the mesh and slips away. And even that small contact enters the same field rather than standing apart from it. You rest inside that field without trying to hold it together. Rain gathers and releases. Wood answers. The screens take the nearest leaves and thin them into texture. The stream continues under the whole night, and you lie high above it, dry in the bed's cool white folds, while the slower drops from the banana leaf keep arriving at their widened intervals, each one familiar before it lands. Chapter 11. One rhythm. And you lie high above it, dry in the bed's cool white folds, while the slower drops from the banana leaf keep arriving at their widened intervals, each one familiar before it lands. By now, you no longer follow them as separate sounds for very long. One reaches the wood. Another gathers somewhere in the leaves. The stream continues below, out of sight and too far down for detail, yet close enough to remain with you as a low thread under everything else. Overhead, the fan turns through its measured circle. Air. Turn. Air. Then the rounded click, always in the same place. Not sharp enough to interrupt, only enough to mark the wheel of it. Your breathing begins to match the fan loosely. Not because you try. There is no counting to do, no need to lengthen or deepen anything. You only notice, after some time has already passed, that your inhale rises under the sheet as the fan comes around, and your exhale loosens as the click passes and fades into the rain again. It is not exact. It does not need to be exact. Still, it is there. Breath and fan. Fan and breath. The stream below carrying its low line beneath them both. The sheet stays cool where it lies flat across your chest and stomach, and warmer where it has taken the shape of your legs. Even after hours in the bed, it keeps a faint crispness at the edges, a smoothness that does not cling. When you shift one ankle against the other, the fabric gives a dry, brushed sound. The pillow has warmed beneath your cheek, but one turned corner still offers a cooler square of cloth near your mouth, and your breath touches it, returns from it, and disappears. Above you, the tied-back net hangs from the 4 posts in pale lengths. One length stirs once as a slightly warmer current moves through the pavilion. It lifts no more than a finger's width from stillness, draws inward, then settles again. After that, it hangs as before, almost vertical, the folds resting back into themselves. You feel that tiny movement more than you watch it. A brief change in the air over your forearm, a passing coolness at the side of your neck. Then the same warm humidity returns, balanced by the fan's slow turning overhead. The room remains exactly what it has been all night. Roof above, dark teak beneath, the bed raised in the middle of breathable space, rain sounding beyond the screens and down through leaves to the ravine. Even the floorboards seem farther away now. though you know their stored warmth is still there beneath the bed. Under the table with the lacquer tray. Under the threshold where the petals have gone damp and fragrant. You do not need to think of those things in detail. It is enough that they remain in their places. Fruit still cool on the tray. Stone basin in the alcove carrying its mineral chill. Batik folded at your feet, dry in the dark. All of it unchanged. A breath comes in. A breath goes out. The fan turns. The stream keeps its low undertone. Rain gathers in the leaves and lets go where it can. Your body has become less a set of separate places than one long, resting weight. Shoulder in the mattress. Hip in the mattress. Calf against sheet. Heel lightly tucked. The small of your back no longer asking to be arranged. Your jaw unclenched enough that the tongue lies broader in the mouth. The hand nearest the pillow open without effort. Fingers bent in their own natural curve. You could name each point of contact if you wanted. But naming feels less necessary now. The bed receives the same weight and gives back the same support. Minute by minute, without variation. Somewhere beyond the mesh, rain passes from one broad surface to another. Banana leaf first, perhaps, then lower leaves. Then the wood of the veranda edge, when a drop grows heavy enough to fall clear. Not every drop reaches the same place. That is part of why the pattern stays restful. It repeats without becoming rigid. The stream below does something similar. Constant, but never mechanical. You hear no splash, no stone, no current dividing around roots. Height and foliage have softened all that away. What reaches you is only one field of sound. The fan's click returns. For a moment, your breath arrives with it so closely that the two seem to meet. Then they drift apart again. That looseness is pleasant. You are not trying to match anything. You are only lying here long enough that the room's repeating motions begin to pass through you. The turn of the blades, the slight pressure of air on the sheet, the release of breath from your ribs, a faint sway in the bed, another rounded click, another breath. The air touching your face is neither cool nor warm for more than a breath at a time. The fan turns and brings a thinner current over your forehead. It passes. The room's humidity returns along your temple and throat. Then another turn, another passing thread of air. This alternation has gone on for so long that your skin receives it before your mind does. Forehead, collarbone, bare forearm. Then stillness between one pass and the next. A drop lands on the veranda edge. Not loud, just wood receiving water. Then the stream again, already there before and after it. Then the fan, turning through another circle. Your exhale leaves a little more fully this time. Not deeper, only less retained. The ribs settle lower. The belly softens under the sheet. The throat does not hold on to the breath as it goes. When the next inhale comes, it comes without effort, entering through the nose into the same warm, rain-breathed air that has moved through the pavilion all evening. It is simply air passing in, then out, while the room continues around it. Your face eases deeper into the pillow's warm warmth on one side, while that cooler corner of percale still touches near your lips. Your top knee rests where it fell. Your lower shoulder has stopped negotiating with the mattress and simply lies there. Even your eyes, behind their lids, feel less inclined to move. The room has become simple enough that there is nothing to track. Breath in, breath out. Turn of the blades, rounded click. The low line of water in the ravine below. A faint movement in the net, then none. The sheet against your shin, the pillow under your cheek. The humid air moving and pausing, moving and pausing. If another drop falls from the banana leaf to the veranda, it joins the pattern already made. If a palm tip brushes the mesh, it enters and leaves without changing anything. If the teak gives some minute answer to damp and weight, it is already part of the cradle that has carried you this far into the night. Nothing needs to become more distinct than this. Breath remains. Air remains. Water remains. The bed beneath you keeps its shape. The sheet keeps its coolness where it can. Overhead, the fan goes on through another turn, and another, and another, while below, the stream continues its low line in the dark. Chapter 12. The night keeps holding you. You rest in the middle of these repeating things until the room no longer needs to be sorted into parts. The white percale keeps a little coolness under one forearm. At your throat, the air has gone warmer by so little you would not call it a change if your skin had not found it first. Humidity lies evenly now across your face, the tops of your feet, the hollow above the collarbone. Not heavy, simply there. The sheet at your hip, the loosened place along the jaw, your shoulder giving another fraction to the mattress without effort. Above, under the high along roof, the fan continues its measured turning. One blade passes, then the next, then the next. And once in each full circle comes that rounded click you have known for hours now. It no longer marks time so much as shape. A curve completed, a motion returning to itself. The air it moves reaches you in low, repeated strokes, enough to keep the linen from warming completely, enough to keep the night from settling too close on the skin. You do not need to picture the pavilion clearly. By now it is known by feel. The dark timber holding a little warmth, the tied-back net lifting almost imperceptibly when the fan finds it. The open side beyond the bed where rain keeps on with its fine grain, and the ravine falls away into leaves and the unseen stream. A fuller drop gathers somewhere on the broad curve of a banana leaf outside, grows heavy enough to let go, and taps the wooden edge of the veranda. Then the rain resumes around it. That sound has repeated often enough to become part of the room's pattern. Leaf, drop, wood. Not regular, not irregular either. Only recurring, as certain things recur in the night when no one is trying to count them. Sometimes one drop follows another after a short pause. Sometimes the leaf keeps its water longer. The wooden edge receives each one with the same muted note, and the note enters the larger field of rain without changing it. Near the threshold, the kanang sari remains where it was placed earlier. You do not see the petals in detail now. What returns instead is only the faint sandalwood, thinning into the humid air until it is almost timber, almost rain-warm dark. And then, on the next pass of moving air, becoming itself again for a moment, sweetness touched by dampness, smoke remembered more than smelled. You breathe in, and the air carries rain, teak, that slight sweetness, and the clean, dry note of laundered cotton from the bed itself. You breathe out, and your mouth softens a little more at the hinge of the jaw. Somewhere beyond the screen, wet palm tips touch and ease away again. The contact reaches you less as a separate sound than as a brief change in texture at the edge of the rain. The bed stays dry under the roof. Your body has accepted that balance so fully, it no longer feels like trust. It feels ordinary, which is another way comfort settles in. The back of one knee loosens. The sheet lies over your legs with hardly any weight, but enough to be felt at the shins and along the outside of one calf. The pillow keeps its familiar shape under your head. A cooler patch remains near the edge where the fan reaches it more directly, and when your cheek drifts a little nearer, you register that coolness without needing to seek it. Overhead, the fan completes another turn. Click. The sound below the pavilion continues too, though by now it is less a stream than a long, liquid underside to the whole night. Far down in the ravine, water moves over stone and through its narrow course, softened by foliage and distance, until no individual movement can be heard. You do not follow it downward anymore. You simply include it, the way you include your own breathing once you stop listening for each separate inhale. A warmer current drifts through the pavilion. It finds the forearms first, then the throat, then the place where the sheet rests lightly over your middle. Not a change in weather, only the room easing by a degree, as if the timber and thatch have let go of a little stored heat, and your body has answered before your mind does. The fan keeps turning through it, folding warmth into cooler strands of air until neither one dominates. With that, the sandalwood near the threshold rises again for a moment, thinner than before, and somehow fuller for being faint. You do not think about the offering for long. It is enough to know it is still there, close to the floor, close to the doorway, while the rain continues beyond. Another drop falls from the banana leaf. Wood. Then a pause long enough for the stream below to show through a little more clearly. Then rain on leaves again, finer and more spread out, touching broad surfaces and narrow ones, upper fronds and lower growth, screen and rail, and the dark spaces between. Your breathing has become so even that the fan's click sometimes seems to arrive inside it, not above it. Inhale, air moving over the sheet. Exhale, the mattress receiving you more completely. Click. Inhale, warm dampness at the nostrils, cooler air where the fan reaches. Exhale, the faint scent of cotton and timber. Click. No thought needs to stay long enough to finish itself. One begins and then thins. Another rises only halfway and dissolves into sensation before it becomes words. You know where you are, but the knowing rests lower now, in the ribs, in the neck against the pillow, in the easy weight of your legs on the mattress. The room has become easier in this way. Details remain, but they no longer stand apart so sharply from one another. A trace of warmth in the floorboards, the high dark overhead, the threshold where sweetness sometimes returns, rain at the veranda edge, the stream below. Your attention moves among them with less effort, as though all their edges have been rounded by the same damp air. The fan turns. A palm tip brushes the outer screen and slides away. A drop releases from the banana leaf and finds the wooden edge again. Below, water continues through the ravine. You lie among these continuities and give less and less effort to distinguishing them. The sheet cool at one ankle, the air warm at the collarbone, the pillow shaped to the side of your head, the faint cradle sway of the pavilion, so slight that it is felt more as permission to release than as motion. Even that almost disappears after a while. The structure remains suspended in the canopy, balanced and well made. But your body has taken that in so fully that the height itself has become restful. You are not thinking of being above the ground. You are simply here, where the teak supports the bed, and the bed supports you. Another pass of warmer air moves through, softer now. The net at one post stirs once, hardly enough to alter its shape, then hangs as before. The click overhead rounds out another turn. Rain threads through leaves. A single drop gathers, falls, and taps the veranda edge. The sandalwood near the threshold comes and goes in such light traces that you cannot tell whether you are smelling it or remembering it. Your hands have grown still in the exact places where they came to rest. Your feet are quiet under the sheet. Your eyes, whether open to the dark or closed against it, no longer change the room. What reaches you now reaches you in arrivals. The warmer air at the throat, the faint sweetness, the drop on wood, the fan's rounded click, the long water below. Breath enters, breath leaves. Fan, rain, drop on wood. A sweetness near the threshold, the long line of water below, and then again, with less need for naming, breath, the stream. Click. Breath. Air. Rain. Wood. Below that, the stream.